I speak to Liverpool fan Neil Atkinson from the Anfield Wrap and Everton fan Peter McFarlane from the Blue Room podcast. Morning, both.
Morning.
Morning.
Neil, first, 2 goals on the break, a clean sheet. You must be chuffed.
Yeah, it's much better. I thought Liverpool's shape was good all the way through the game before you get into the goals. I thought there was a sharpness about them that's been missing recently. So all of that bodes very, very well indeed. Let's be clear about this. It's just one game. It might be against Everton, but it's still just one game, and Liverpool have got a lot to do between now and the end of the campaign. But it was a real shift in attitude, in outlook. But as I say, the main thing, the best thing, was that the shape looked the absolute business.
There was a lot of optimism, I think, Peter, after the Arsenal win. This may be a bit of a reality check, but at the same time, if you'd said you'll take 3 points from a game against Arsenal and a game against Liverpool, you would have taken them, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, and I think that's it's so important to keep that perspective on this, on this game from last night. Obviously, it's never good to lose a Merseyside derby. We'd always want to go to Anfield and put in a good performance, but as I say, a little bit of perspective is needed. And if you would have offered me 3 points out of those 2 games before we went into them, I would have been delighted with that. So yeah, it's obviously disappointing to lose, but our biggest game of this week is Leeds on Saturday.
Question for both of you: what on earth is Jordan Pickford doing for the first goal? You first, Peter.
Well, I think, to be honest, he's not helped out whatsoever by his defenders. I think
true.
Mykolenko committing and going to close down the angle of Núñez. Obviously, we know all about Darwin Núñez's pace. I think once Mykolenko makes that decision to go over when he's got 2 players behind him, I think he leaves Jordan Pickford totally exposed. Obviously, Núñez has done well, but I mean, as a defender, Mykolenko's got to be better for me. He's got to do better. He's got to make a decision there where Darwin Núñez has got to pull something out of the hat, something spectacular out to score from that position. Now, when Mykolenko goes over to close him down, he opens that space up behind, which, there's two Liverpool players. Jordan Pickford's gambled that Mo Salah's going to miss it and it's going to go to the other player coming through on the back post. Obviously, that gamble didn't pay off. But as I say, I think it's more of a fault of our defence, our defenders, rather than purely on Jordan Pickford.
And Neil, the thing about both Liverpool goals is they were quick. They're on the break. They're at the kind of pace that you become used to seeing from Liverpool, but haven't seen for a while, and that's encouraging, isn't it?
It is encouraging. They also pick the moments really, really well. Let's be clear about this. You don't get many opportunities to play at Anfield on the break quite like that. And when those opportunities came up, they were absolutely clinical. And that's what we needed to see last night. We needed no messing about, to be honest with you, Rick. There's been so much messing about recently from this Liverpool side in a number of different ways. There's been behaviour that sort of borders on the juvenile at times from this Liverpool side in a number of different ways. What we got finally last night was both a grown-up performance, but also in those moments they were absolutely surgical, they were absolutely clinical, and that's how they ended up winning the game by 2-0. So, it was the business, all that. And on Pickford, I think just in general, the idea of playing at Anfield in front of a crowd just gets in his head, and that works to Liverpool's advantage. And as long as he's Everton goalkeeper, then I think we win at Anfield every year.
Yeah, there was a moment towards the end where a lot of the Liverpool fans were enjoying singing Divock Origi's name. Is Sean Dyche going to have enough to keep you up, do you think, Peter?
I'd like to think so, yeah. Certainly, the Arsenal game would have given us more hope than last night. I think a lot of it's dependent on the fitness of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, because as everyone can see, this season with the lowest scorers in the Premier League, it's no coincidence that we find ourselves in the position we are. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin hasn't been firing on all cylinders and hasn't been able to play as often as we would have liked. So I think it's going to be a tough task for Sean Dyche to get a tune out of these players, but certainly we're not giving up. As I say, last night doesn't really have any bearing on the rest of our season. Last night was almost like a bit of a free hit for us. I think overall, obviously we didn't play the football that we wanted to see, but Liverpool have got 2 good goals on the counter-attack, which with their pace there's not much really you can do about that, especially with some of the players we're missing. But overall, I think we've shown enough defensive solidity in the last 2 games to show that we do still have that chance of grinding out the points and grinding out results. But as I say, a lot of it's dependent on the fitness of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and we certainly haven't been helped out by our owners who promised us a striker in January, and one wasn't forthcoming.
If you were listening yesterday, you'd have heard Dan Clubb from Redmond TV and Les Roberts from the Blue Room podcast previewing the game, and they're back again this morning. Dan, you'll be a happier one this morning.
Yeah, I certainly am. Yeah, over the moon, to be honest with you. It was much more like Liverpool, like Klopp said. Yeah, it was pretty much a vintage night for us. It was, yeah, much happier this morning than I was yesterday. Filled with trepidation yesterday morning when I spoke to you, but yeah, it's all good now.
Does it feel like a big weight off your shoulders? Do you feel like, okay, right, we're going to have a bounce now?
Yeah, we needed some sort of springboard, not just in the result, but the actual performance as well. I think we needed to show signs of what we were all about and what made us so special in seasons gone by. And that was all there last night. It wasn't sort of perfect in terms of the play, and it wasn't always 100% accurate. But what it did show is that fight, that desire, and that intensity is still there, and the players are still capable. And I think between now and the end of the season, we just needed to see that. And we got some key players back on the pitch as well from injury. So all in all, it was pretty much a spot-on night's work.
Les, let's just keep the final score aside for a second. In Everton's first game under Sean Dyche against Arsenal, we could see that real passion and real competitiveness coming from the whole of the team. Did you see the same from the Blues last night?
No, it was the same old story, wasn't it? They just didn't turn up at Anfield, didn't turn up in a derby, and Liverpool did. I think that was the most disappointing thing. We just let them play the game the way they wanted to. There was no real intensity from the weekend. I don't think we were ever going to replicate that performance, but a fraction of that performance would have seen us in better shape during that game. You can talk about things like fine margins, like if Tarkowski's header goes in, the Reds are probably on the back foot then, a little bit shaken because the confidence is low. It didn't, and they went and scored seconds later. But having said that, I don't think we deserved anything from the game because we just weren't in it.
In this morning's Echo, Chris Beasley wrote about the Blues' woeful lack of consistency. How do they now find that consistency?
This is something several managers have been asking themselves for the last 6, 7, 8 years. I really don't know. It's because they will do that. It's, you look at earlier in the season when Frank Lampard was there, and we drew against Man City, then we get beat by Southampton, we get beat by Wolves. There's just no consistency, no matter what team or formation you put out there. Never quite sure what one's going to turn up. And that was the most disappointing thing because we had a platform to build on there and we just didn't.
Dan, back to you. Jurgen Klopp was able to include Virgil van Dijk, Roberto Firmino, Diogo Jota and the bench after injuries. My mouth won't work today, bear with me. I've got terrible toothache. How big is this as Liverpool start to head into the business end of the season?
Yeah, it's hugely significant because he has to leave some first-team players out of the squad entirely last night as well. I think Fabio Carvalho, Oxlade-Chamberlain and Curtis Jones all miss out altogether. That just shows you the strength in depth and the options he does have to call upon. And you can probably add Luis Diaz to that list as well in the weeks to come. So, yeah, having them options available is massive because there's no doubt about it. We've had loads of problems this season. Injuries have been a main contributing factor to our sort of downfall. So, yeah, having those players to turn to when the game's tight or we're not quite at our best, especially Diogo Jota, he's predatory-like, and if you need a goal at an offering, he's your man. So it's massive between now and the end of the season. I'm not saying top four's back on because I'm not entirely sure it is, but if we are going to do anything, having those players back is going to be huge.
Les, Everton's directors showed up at Anfield last night. This coming after they feel unable to attend games at Goodison Park on that security advice that we're told they were given. What did you think about their appearance at Anfield?
It was a little bit rum, wasn't it? When they can't turn up for home games like a mile across the park to then turn up at Anfield. Yeah, it was a little bit strange, the optics of it. And just to pick up on Dan's point there, talking about Liverpool's strength and depth, if anyone saw Everton's bench last night and the options that Dyche had to play with, there was nothing on there, and there was no way he could really put any player on to change that game. Whereas, as Dan said, Liverpool could put Jota on, who could really, he's a good impact player. As he said, he's a predator. Everton have just got nothing like that, and that pretty much comes down to the board's performance in August and January. And it's if the worst does happen, because we're back there now after the euphoria of the Arsenal game. Thinking, we might be okay. And it has kept our head above water, that game. Looking at last night, you think, no, it is going to be a rough ride to the end of the season. If the worst did happen, it would squarely be on the board.
Sports Social Podcast Network.